Have you ever wondered if the Bible's true? When I was about 12 years old, I remember asking my Sunday school teachers and my father, who was even a preacher, how do we know if the Bible is true? I don't remember exactly what they said, but I do know that I was not satisfied with the answer. It didn't satisfy my curiosity. The pastors and Bible teachers that I often heard portrayed the Bible with words such as infallible, inerrant, and holy. They spoke as though the Bible had fallen from the sky. Since I figured that this wasn't the case, it left me with a deep desire to investigate for myself. And I'm thankful I did, because 25 years later, my own inquisitive daughter asked me some similar questions. In fact, she asked me so many questions I asked her to write them down. I still have the original sheet right here. Why this? Why that? Why? Well, I'm glad to say that I was able to give her a well-informed answer, an answer that I'd like to share, at least in part, with you here today. What I'll be sharing is based on the findings of Josh McDowell and Lee Strobel, both of whom, out of skepticism, investigated the reliability of the New Testament writings. What they discovered was the New Testament had an abundance of ancient resources. It was written by actual eyewitnesses relatively close to when the events had actually happened, making them a remarkably reliable source of early Christian history. During the next few minutes, I'll present to you information about manuscriptology, the study of ancient texts, and two main tests used to judge the reliability and trustworthiness of ancient manuscripts. The first test is simply finding out how many documents are available to look at. The second test is finding out how soon were the documents written after the actual events took place. Let's look at our first test. How many documents do we have to look at? Well, Josh McDowell, a well-known speaker at many colleges and universities, recognizes in his book titled More Than a Carpenter that there are over 20,000 New Testament manuscripts in existence. To help illustrate these statistics, I have this stack of books. They represent 20,000 New Testament manuscripts. Each side of each page stands for one New Testament manuscript. For comparison's sake, I have this stack of 10 pieces of paper. They represent Caesar's war commentaries and other ancient documents. Most ancient documents only have about 10 copies available. So when you compare the two, we have 20,000 New Testament manuscripts, whereas other people such as Plato, Aristotle, and Caesar, we have about 10 copies about their lives. Our second test is to see how soon after the events took place were the documents written. Lee Strobel, a once skeptic and was a journalist for the Chicago Tribune and author of the book A Case for Christ, would like to ask how many eyeballs were there. In other words, how many people saw the events? Well, when we think about the New Testament, there were literally thousands of eyewitnesses. But I'd like to zero in on four main eyewitness accounts. That would be of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. How soon were these Gospels written after the actual events took place? Well, those who study ancient documents agree that fragments of these manuscripts were found that date between AD 50 and AD 70. Well, since Jesus lived till about 30 AD, these copies were written by people from the same generation where Jesus lived. So I have this small hourglass to represent the 30 years between when Jesus lived and when we have documents about his life. And for comparison's sake, I have this second larger hourglass that represent the time gap between other ancients and the events that we have recorded. People such as Caesar, Plato, and Aristotle. By the way, the average gap between their lives and when we have documentation about it is about 1,000 years. So as you can see, with Jesus Christ in his life, the New Testament findings are within 30 years. We have actual documentation within 30 years of his life. And others, the gap is over 1,000, even though we believe full well about these people. Now, if I was permitted, I'd share with you how accurately the New Testament was copied, hand-copied, and the trustworthiness of the eyewitnesses. But as you can see just through these two tests, that the New Testament has plenty of ancient copies. It was authored by eyewitnesses fairly soon after Christ's life. And in comparing to other ancient documents, the New Testament really sets the standard. So someday a co-worker, a neighbor, your son or daughter may ask you, how would you know if the Bible is true? My hope is that you would be able to confidently explain that because of the overwhelming evidence and study of ancient manuscripts, that the New Testament is a reliable document and worthy of being read, worthy of being studied, and worthy of being believed. I leave you with these words and challenge from an ancient philosopher, Socrates. Follow the evidence where it leads. Thank you. Oh, you do need to pay. Okay, good.
I think that was good.
Yes,
That
it was
should
very
pursue
good.
it.
I think you
You
should
should
keep
never
going.
redo that.
Okay, hopefully that was not.
Yeah.
Do
No,
not
it was
redo
fine.
it.